Hello and welcome to this special edition of Sean's Thoughts. First, I want to explain what I mean by a special edition. You see, I often do most of my recordings live for Sean's Thoughts, at least the newer segment which I started. And during those live broadcasts, I will leave the audio unedited, meaning that I'm simply speaking and delivering what I have to say with just a stream of thought, meaning that I don't often, or most often, I don't even have notes or any idea sometimes of what I'm going to say. And well, the reason why this is a special edition is because I'm actually recording this in the late night underneath the stars in the city, which amazingly enough, I can see a lot more stars recently. This is a special edition because I will essentially correct the audio to give myself more of a clear view, because I recognize that when I do my live audios, often I'll tangent off on a different direction, as which I'm doing right now. So with that being said, this talk I want to give tonight is on forgiveness, and I'm going to try to make this as succinct and as compact as possible, essentially a talk for us to just discuss the importance of forgiveness moving forward. And you see, if you followed the GIA reports and other people like Carrie Kay, you would be informed that we are coming to an end of an age, an end of an era. And this era was essentially servitude, and that we as Homo sapiens, we essentially worked for a system, a matrix, and this matrix at the hands of another, they essentially controlled everything, giving us the illusion of certain things in order to keep us in form as masses, as the majority. You can kind of look at it like that show called Ants, where millions of ants worked for a few grasshoppers. And that's essentially how our society was created. Why I want to talk to you about forgiveness today is because this is going to be a major opportunity for us to express forgiveness. And forgiveness not as in walking up to someone and saying, I forgive you. Forgiveness in the fact that we release and let go of the trauma that we've held on to because of the experiences that we have undergone for perhaps a very long time, and more of us remembering more of these trespasses against us. And that we are going to have the opportunity to let all of that go. And maybe that's part of the requirement of this whole process we're going through. I always imagine the idea of potential energy turning into kinetic energy, and just the idea of creating, just turning that potential of a situation that what we were wrong by, that energy into kinetic energy, and perhaps that's how we fully break free from this matrix. And the reason why this potential for forgiveness is there is because they, meaning the people up there who governed everything, they did a lot of harm. And yet when we kind of come to the understanding that we were all being used, and we were all being used for playing their parts, those people that were more susceptible or more in conditions that were more manipulated, they turned into the roles that they played. And that other people who weren't willing to play by their rules, well, they got rejected at an earlier age. Most people out there wouldn't choose to be homeless, and yet there are so many homeless people out there. And so it demonstrates that there are so many injured people out there, angry people out there, not just in those situations. Sure, there's probably many of them who that's the way they choose to live, and they're more in tune with getting what they need, when they need, how they need it, just by the fact that they were perhaps more connected to the divine, that they were more free in a sense, that it's simply our perception of them is or was affected. See, that's what I've come to learn, is that a lot of us were manipulated by external forces. And this is not using blame as a way to hold or withhold holding myself accountable. See, because I personally myself work so hard at creating a theater company employing people who were true magnificent versions of their creation, like a lighting designer and director and different actors that were all really exceptional, were willing to do their craft for essentially free, or with the idea that we were raising money for charity, which we tried to do, but even the charity, yeah, even the things didn't work out with them. And so where I go back all this way too is back to the idea of recognizing that there were forces that were affecting all of us. And therefore, maybe to varying degrees, it allows us to forgive those people who did wrong us in however they did wrong us. Of course, that's harder for some to do than others, and I completely understand that. We're all at a different level of our healing. So perhaps it's blatantly unable to forgive, and we declare that. That simply shows us, or shows that person, that they're still on the road to their healing. And their healing is releasing that trauma. It's part of healing anyways, is to release that trauma, that pain that made you unable to forgive. It's kind of like energy that we hold on to within our field. And that energy can be essentially anywhere within our field, and we feel it at different portions of our body. Forgiveness is essentially like releasing that energy from your field. And one of the ways that I found out how to do that personally was doing TFT tapping. This is thought field therapy tapping. And this truly, I believe, allowed me to release those traumas that I held on to, those shames and guilts, because I would bring up, for instance, a guilt that I had, and then I would do this tapping sequence while feeling the guilt, feeling the emotion wherever it was in my field, and keeping that while I was doing the tapping. And it seemed to essentially distorted that frequency or that emotion of that. And I was able to detach from it. I did it for 100 times over and over, almost every day. And I did so many different sequences on different days regarding different things. Sometimes I would just say to myself, oh, well, just give me some sort of trauma. And then I would feel in my body where it was. And then I would just cycle through the different algorithms until I found something to relieve me of that. That essentially is forgiveness. It's releasing and letting go that trauma that we're holding on to, that's been causing that disease, that's been causing that foul mood. And forgiveness is simply just releasing, letting go. And by letting go, we're ridding ourselves of those essential tethers that are holding us back from moving forward. And it isn't about having to walk up to someone and say, hey, I forgive you, and then let them accept it or anything, because it doesn't really matter whether or not they accept or reject what you have to say or feel, because it's about us and our field. Yes, it can definitely make things better if both parties, for example, are forgiving one another, if that's kind of like the trauma that's been between them. You know, it can definitely help both sides. In my opinion, anyways, healing is raising our vibration, and raising our vibration not being about being more excited like than you are. That doesn't mean that to me. It means by removing those traumas or those energy packages that are in our field and resolving them on our side, because that's what matters. Our field matters. As I said before, one of the things that I had experienced was going back in my past and kind of coming to understanding of why I did something. And sometimes those are the things I was shameful or guilty about, because I did something in my past and made someone uncomfortable. Not that I necessarily did it on purpose, but that I just did it, that I was privy to or part of that event. And then when I was able to go back and see how and why those events happen, it allowed me to release it. So in a sense, there was two parts to that forgiving, is letting go of the energy, and then also resolving it mentally within our head and coming to an appreciation for it. And I think that that's what true forgiveness is. It's when you're able to appreciate or hold gratitude for a person who had harmed you in your life. Like, that's the true nature of forgiveness, is to be able to express and feel that emotion by someone who did in the past harm you at whatever degree they did, and to feel that appreciation that they were willing to help you. I guess you get to a point in life where you recognize that the person that did what they did to you, that you released it as well as you've understood it. And then that, I think, could create a considerable potential for that energy to release into the kinetic of forgiveness. And forgiveness, I find, as one of the higher vibrational words you could say, or the expression of them, holds such positive energy. I think that forgiveness is fundamentally important. See, we're going to have a lot of different situations coming forward where we're going to learn other countries and other peoples and other colors and other lovers and other person's narrative. We're going to come to the realization that a lot of that was tampered with, that a lot of that was set against us to make us angry, to separate us, to hold us back on either side of any confrontation that the Matrix could hold us on. And not just the Matrix, but overall the social programming of how we've essentially programmed to be. When we realize that all of us, whether it's a neighbor across the street or it's neighbor in a different city or country or color, as I said, or religion, that it's all essentially been manipulated to the point to keep us separated rather than recognizing that we are all of one, that we are all essentially the same. We just hold different colors, different heights, different form, but we all do desire and have the same values of life. And if we're not forced and convinced to break our own personal moral codes, if we're not programmed by movies showing that it's all right for people to do different things at different times, if we all support each other, I think, to a higher degree. And yeah, sure, it's not going to start off with the whole world turning into a Mary Poppins movie. However, I truly do think that we are going to begin moving forward in a direction, and that direction is led by forgiveness and therefore healing. Everyone having their own healing journey. And for some people, forgiveness won't be the first thing they heal. There's a lot of other high vibrational words to consider and talk about in these talks, but I feel that forgiveness definitely takes the cake as being a really important one. And if we're on the road to healing, to releasing those negative stories, those negative events in our lives, to release them, whatever they may be, and essentially tell ourselves a different story, then forgiveness is definitely a key to get there. And getting the idea that I should do some sort of forgiveness course, and I don't know how it would be, perhaps. I don't find myself as an authority on anything. I just like to talk about things that I'm aware of and that I think in my mind, and I feel the delightful desire to share them, especially when they're very positive, at least in my perspective. And I think a lot of us are going to be doing that coming soon as well, is aligning with or getting together with or connecting with the people that are aligned with us. And it's like I said before, if we're by ourselves, having only one horse for 1 horsepower, we're only able to do it for ourselves. But when we start to get 2 and 4 and a larger community of like-minded people, then we're going to go into that, like 1 horse is 1 horsepower, 2 horses is 4 horsepower, kind of like that multiplication factor. And 4 is going to be like, 16 horsepower. And then 5 is going to be 25 horsepower, but building that community. And that will be done essentially with forgiving that historical event that they may or may not have been lying about. And even for those ones like the World Wars, for example, those soldiers were essentially programmed or convinced to do what they did. And the ideas of these countries having political disputes, well, it essentially is them creating a narrative for us to follow. And so even those situations of those conflicts with different races and different colors and such, being in the present of now, no longer being connected to those past grievances, that's going to be so important. I have an illuminating language on the word forgive. That's one thing to definitely look at. And then I have another possibilities episode called Forgiveness. And then, of course, I'm going to have, I guess, in a sense, lots of other videos with the idea of forgiveness, perhaps some of the meditations from the Do Nothing. Do Nothing definitely gives you a moment of relaxation, and it allows you to meditate, even if you're in a very high stress situation and you're having that desire to scroll. It's like a challenge if it's in your feed to actually not scroll past it, to do it. And I think that challenge would be great because what it does is it gives you that calmness and presence in the moment, but it's also interfering with your connection to the matrix in a sense. And it'll allow you to have a moment free from that effect to the cortisol that's in your brain that pumps it into your body and keeps you in that fight or flight state. That's why video gamers are very stressed and they have that constant fight or fight because you're playing a video game and your body's releasing because your body doesn't necessarily realize it's not experiencing what your eyes are seeing on the screen and that intensity of the battle. And, as a video gamer, you understand what I'm meaning. And you can definitely feel that thrill and it's exhilarating. And so you can kind of say that there was a lot of that cortisol being pumped into us from the different media streams, from news with fear and pornography with, sexual excitement. And not to say that sexual excitement's a bad thing, but what is caused by the porn, I think there's some sort of issue there. And other things like the sports, like very violent, dramatic sports. In the olden days, they had the Colosseums, and since then they've moved up to stadiums. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, like in the Roman eras, that every city had a Colosseum that was doing the same type of violence all over the world. And, it's just been, most of them have been reset, but because Italy played a dominant role, perhaps, in being connected or located to the Vatican, that they were able to keep a lot more of their old architecture versus a lot of the other stuff was all blown up. But anyways, these do nothing videos, they essentially free up that moment so you can reduce that cortisol level so it doesn't affect your body as much, because that's a big thing that messes up with your body is the imbalance of melatonin and serotonin. And so when your hormones aren't being released properly in a timely fashion because of that constant flight or fight. So my experience is that these do no thing videos allow us to have that moment of pause and reflection. And I think that reflection is also something super important. I'm definitely going to suggest that whenever you watch or experience, as I like to put it, any video that you truly resonate with, it's super beneficial to reflect by writing a comment about what you experienced or or perhaps your insights into what was shared, or even opinions, and, to keep them respectful. And this allows for a greater conversation to erupt and a greater connection between us all. And that definitely will help lend itself to forgiveness. So when you're listening to one of these videos and you got as far as you did, to take a moment or not, just do it right away, however it is, whatever works for you, after you've had some time to consider it, or even right after and later after you ponder it. But my point is that you reflect by commenting and acknowledging that you, in fact, finished it. I didn't say it in my other video, but the reason why I like the way that I do the filming is because we often don't look at the world from different angles, from different vantage points. We see the world from our point, and it's often the same perspective as the people around us. And so these videos were also created with the video footage, or you could say that these videos, that the foundational footage is an expression of just different perspectives from different views, looking up at trees in the way that you wouldn't while you talked. And so welcome to your journey. And thank you for taking the time to commit yourself perhaps to a healing journey. please enjoy and definitely comment on as much as you can within the community, within this whole new creations, this whole new earth creations community that we're building. Have a good night.